Hey, what is going on, crypto people? Hey, listen, who is Catherine Austin of the former Bush administration? And what is she saying about the BIS? Look, she says some things Tucker Carlson didn't know. Tucker Carlson. And she shared some stuff that I thought to myself, I have no clue how bad it really is. How bad the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, the central bank for central banks, how bad it really is. We're going to get into it. We're going to get into it. Look, I'm going to share this video. I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking. Rupert, what's going on, bro? Appreciate you checking in. Alarming. Alarming. I'm hoping that the Wi-Fi is going to cooperate and or this laptop for this video because it's really, really important. I see I'm already lagging on my end already, but I hope this is going to work. Happy Saturday to each and every one of you. Look, that's what I heard was alarming. But around the 20-minute, 28-minute mark or so, she shared something that I thought was just profound, profound. And I think it's important that we share it. I was going to go to the gym, get a little cardio in or something. And it's like when I heard this, I'm like, I have to do this. I have to get this out because this is important. But is the digital asset space the answer to what the central bankers are planning? Is XRP, Bitcoin, and FLR tokens, Flare tokens, the answer to what the central banks are planning? I believe this is why we're here. I believe it's just one of the reasons why we're here because we have to have an answer to what they have planned. It's crazy when you think to say that they have something planned that's not good for us, that the central bankers have something planned that is not great for us. So listen, I don't know how many of you guys saw this interview with Tucker Carlson and this lady named Catherine Austin. It has over 1 million views, but that's probably typical for uh, for Tucker Carlson. I'm not sure on his videos, but I stumbled upon it actually because of a short. Interestingly enough, they clipped out a short from that hour and a half or so interview, and I was like, what? Like what? Like the Crypto Seas fam, gots to. Old money doesn't want you to win, fam. Gots to hear this. This was cray. Absolutely cray. Appreciate you guys checking in. Do me a favor and hit that like button on the way in. That'd be really, really awesome. We always like to have just as many likes as we have viewers in the stream. And again, happy Saturday. How many of you have seen this interview? I think that works better. How many of you guys have seen that interview with Tucker Carlson and this lady, Catherine Austin? I guess it was published about a month ago on YouTube. Yeah, over 1 million views. Look, I know people are excited about XRPL Apex, which was awesome. Big news from Flare Networks and Vivo Power, and more news about Trident doing an XRP treasury as well. Came across a new product. It's kind of like a index product from Bitwise. I'll look into it and see if it's good. Um, but in any case, crazy in the streets. Keyless is in the building. The lady of crypto's here. She says, yes, I keep missing these lives. Hi, CJ. Hi, Keyless. How are you? She says hi to everyone. Keyless says hi to everyone. So this is interesting stuff in the BIS. Look, from Tucker Carlson about the BIS. We gotta cover it. Again, I'm not gonna do a whole lot of talking here. What the market's doing, what the market does. Bitcoin's around 105,000. Ethereum's around 2,700. XRP's around $2.15, right? Solana's around 170 bucks, 40 bucks. Sui's $2.93. The market is doing what the market does. I've been really deep into this course. That's why I haven't been able to come on and do as many videos or live streams as I like. 3 hours. And I'm redoing the first 4 hours. Like I'm just kind of making sure that I know what I know. Interesting stuff. This dude's throwing shade on XRP and SOE. I'm like, what the what? Right? But you gotta apply the principle of discernment when you're going through some stuff. You gotta find out the stuff that's good and ignore the stuff that's bad and move on. You got to get the value from it. Yeah. Sui, I was kind of shocked. I mean, I could see XRP because people do that all the time. But in any case, so no need to go over the numbers, killers, I don't think. Let me find this video. And hopefully we'll get things that's going to cooperate here as far as the laptop capability. I got rid of some stuff on my laptop. I emptied the trash can, so hopefully it's going to work. But it is the weekends, and sometimes you throw the internet in here as well. So here it is, the title from Tucker Carlson's interview. Catherine Fitz. So her name is Catherine Austin Fitz. So power grids, bankers versus the West, secret underground bases, and extension, like extinction events. I'll play this from pretty much the beginning and I'm only going to skip over one part of this, I think. So let's go. I don't know why it's not showing the whole thing here. Okay, there it is.
So thank you for doing this. I know you worked on this for years, but you get the sense, if you're just a sort of aware person, that there is a concerted attempt by governments around the world to digitize commerce and to digitize currency and to basically control people through money. Correct. That's correct. So that was my first question. Is this happening? Am I imagining it?
It's absolutely happening. And what's important to understand, it's been happening for a long time.
What's important to understand, it's been happening for a long time. Let me share give you guys some context. Who is Catherine Austin Fitz? It says here, former Bush administration official. Catherine Austin Fitz on how America's leaders gave up on the country, how America's leaders gave up on the country in the 1990s and began stealing trillions of dollars and built a digital prison to control the population. Now, a lot of us in crypto and the digital asset space, first of all, I'm gonna do a spoiler alert. I know, but I'm gonna have to do it. Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson. This dude had his own TV show, world renowned, like in the political, demographic, so all that stuff, right? This dude, Keyless, did not know who the Bank for International Settlements were. He didn't know. Do you understand how profound that is that we know? And this dude didn't know. Anyway, let's continue.
This is like an invisible corral that they've been building around you for a long, long time. Because how do a few sneak up on the many? Well, you have to do it very quietly and visibly before you throw the trap. So essentially, what they're building, because it's converting a currency system into a control system. So it's really the end of currency. And what they're doing is they've been building the different digital pieces. And when it integrates and comes together, then you literally have a digital concentration camp. It's complete and utter control.
Otherwise known as the world.
Here's the thing to understand. You and I grew up in a world where there was mass media, where you were pitching stories, so you had 57 varieties of ice cream and you're pitching them to 57 different niches, but you're still pitching to mass audiences. What we're talking about is a system where you can surveil, control, and influence one person at a time. And with AI and software, each person can have their custom surveillance, influence, nudging, and control system.
And punishment.
Yes. Enforcement.
Because ultimately, if you control money, you can starve people to death. You can kill
Right. Right. So go back and think of the pandemic. So if I say you can't go more than a mile from your home, and I say you have to be mandated a pharmaceutical, then if you don't take the pharmaceutical, I can turn off your money. If you go more than a mile away from your home, your money and your credit cards won't work. So if whatever rules I lay down, there's a wonderful example. The head of the Bank of International Settlements is the central bank of central banks, and it's been running the process to implement basically an all digital monetary system. And they have innovation hubs all over the world. They've been running this process for a long time. And in 2020, when the pandemic started, or it was October 2020, so the pandemic was underway, the general manager of the Bank of International Settlements was on an IMF panel. And in 1 minute, it's the first time in my life I ever saw a central banker tell the truth. I fell off my chair. And he said, the beauty of this is we can set the rules on how your money works, and we have the technology to enforce them.
Now, for those in the digital asset space, we all heard about this dude. Remember, we all watched that little interview and he said that. Because we're in the digital asset space. You understand? That was my whole point to mentioning about Tucker Carlson not knowing the BIS. We're in a place and we're blessed to be here because we're getting exposed and becoming more and more aware of the truth. Of the truth. It's important to know. It's really, really important to know. It's, you see what I'm saying? You got to know. But we were all there. We were on X. We were watching YouTube videos of people sharing this dude talking about what they planned on doing. But what about the masses, Rupert? What about the 98%, 99% that are not in the digital asset space in the United States and 4% worldwide? It's only about 4% worldwide that are in this space. Don't know. And the central bank it's a plan that's been happening since the 1990s.
What he was saying is literally from one place in anywhere in the world where the technology exists, you can track each person individually. You can set a complex list of rules, like legislation, regulation, and administrative policy, and you can enforce them all with the technology. There's a wonderful movie called The Lives of Others about the German Stasi and surveillance. It's about a group of artists and sort of creative, talented people who are under surveillance by the German Stasi. And you see what it's like to be under surveillance for 24/7. Think of each one of us. We're all under surveillance, not just by governments, but by corporations who are trying to do something, and it may not be anything nefarious. So 80 different companies are trying to sell you something, or 80 different companies are trying to get your data for some reason. And so they have AI and software bots that track you and follow you and learn from you and try and influence what you do, because they're trying to extract some kind of value from you. And literally, think of being attacked by a swarm of bees. We're surrounded now by a swarm of AI software bots, all trying to learn from us, extract something from.
And don't worry, it gets even more juicier. This, I know this may be borderlining on the conspiracy thing, but it gets really, really juicier and more significant here in a few.
To do something. When you go to an all digital system, then there's no escape, and then they can start literally to enforce rules. They do now. So
what are the manifestations of this that maybe we're not paying attention to or don't perceive for what they are.
So look at what they did to the Canadian truckers. We don't like what you're doing. We cut off your money, and we cut off your friends' money. And if people help you, we cut off their money too. So I've known so many different people around the country who've been debanked. We just got legislation passed in Tennessee that a bank over a certain size couldn't debank someone for political or religious reasons. And you're one of the things that's happening.
There's no such federal law.
Not that I know of, but I haven't looked. I've been working with the states because ultimately the one power currently under the Constitution in the United States that can stop this, the power is not delegated to the federal government by the states, are reserved to the states. In other words, the states are technically more powerful than the federal government. And under the Constitution, they have the power to override the federal government on many different issues, including healthcare. And so one of the tensions we see in America is more and more there is a debate between the feds and the states about who has what power. So we've seen a lot of the conservative AGs and treasurers pushing back in a wonderful way, in a marvelous way. The challenge they have is this, and this was said to me by a senator in Northern Ohio. Northern Ohio has one of the best groups of sort of freedom fighting legislators in the country. And as you probably know, because you know Montana, it's very beautiful. And
We're talking about Montana?
Idaho.
Idaho.
But it's right, it's right next to Montana. So one of the Idaho senators said to me, he said, my problem, every time I fight to implement the Constitution, he said, what I learn is every year we send $1 to Washington, and every year Washington sends back $1.19. And when I say I want to implement the Constitution, my constituents say to me, I'd rather have the 19 cents.
Yeah.
So what we've been watching literally since World War II is the federal government and a very, large S, both monetary and fiscal policy, buying people out of the Constitution and buying the whole federal. I mean, the federal government is right now operating so far outside the law. It's, you know how unbelievable it is. So that's the challenge before us. If we want to be free, we're going to have to decide we're not going to let ourselves be, it's like being sort of walked into the slaughterhouse. We're not going to walk into the slaughterhouse.
But you don't even, I guess what bothers me about it, there's something wonderfully straightforward, horrifying, but wonderfully straightforward about just a conventional invasion where people show up with guns and tell you what to do, because at least you know who the enemy is. But there's something very scary in an insidious way about being lulled into slavery.
Right. And the thing to understand about the lulling is the marketing plan works one person at a time. In other words, I buy with money. Your friend, I buy by knocking them off. For the other, your other friend, I get a control file on. So there's thousands of different ways of nudging, buying carrots and sticks to get everybody into the control, into the trap. And what is so insidious about this is much of the marketing plan is invisible, and it really is crafted one by one.
The odds seem overwhelming against the average person in a system that you just described. So how far are we from not being able to exercise constitutional freedoms?
So I don't know how many years. They're clearly pushing to have this done by 2030. And, what I do have to say is if you look at what it takes to stop it, I believe they're going to fail. Now, what I don't underestimate is how much damage they could do. And the failure may not come in time to save America. So
if we could just stop and define terms, who's they?
The central bankers.
Yes.
Right. So we have a democratic republic, or we have a republic and use this democratic process. What happened in 1913 is the bankers took control of monetary policy. What they're trying to do now is take control of fiscal policy. Once
Yep, we talked about that, right? Let me welcome some people to the stream here. What happened in 1913, what happened there is significant. It's important to note. That's how they began to take over the monetary policy. And now they're trying to take over the fiscal policy as well. You know, they're the ones who came up with this 2% inflation thing. Who put them in charge? We all talked about how it happened, how they hoodwinked Congress. And then after that, it was over. They never would, Congress was never able to get that control back. Never ever able to get that control back. What's going on, Pookie Pookie? How are you? Welcome to the stream, my friends. Keela's like, holy crap. Kung Tech Boo is in the building. What's going on? Peace and blessings. CJ, peace and blessings to you, my guy. Appreciate you checking in. The real big Will is here. What's good, fam? May want to follow the Solar Eye Report on the gram. Thank me later. Solar Eye Report. Or did I say that right? Did you spell that out correctly? We'll have to check that out. Rupert said that's why I sold my XRP. I don't support that. I hear you, bro. You got to make your own stance, right? I hear you. I personally have said on the live stream, the biggest problem, essentially the only problem that I had with Ripple Labs, Ripple the company, is this whole CBDC thing. Pookie Pookie says, get some land, some chicken, and goats, throw and grow your own food. Yeah. And in this video, she talks about the extinction and all his plans and how they're preparing for it. I didn't listen to that part of it yet. I hear you. I hear you, Rupert. Rupert says, I hold Flare tokens at Falara because it doesn't rely on XRP. It provides a service to the XRP community, but ultimately it will provide that same service to others. Silver, gold, and water too. Yeah, those are the preppers. That's the preppers. Um, Mastermind 5 is in the building. What's going on, bro? Flare is bigger than imagined. DAI was wrong. What do you mean DAI was wrong? What do you mean Mastermind 5 was DAI throwing shade at Flare Networks and Hugo and the boys? Do tell. Rodwell No Breakers in the building. What's going on, bro? Hey, Rafi, how are you, bro? Appreciate you guys checking in. Do me a favor, hit that like button. That'd be really, really cool. Do so that on the way in. If you didn't get a chance to do it yet, no worries. Just collapse the chat real quick. I'll smash that like and come back and hang out with the crypto siege and fam lead. The BIS. Two things about the BIS that we didn't know. And it's got to tell you, it's bigger than what most people think. It's alarming, disturbing in a lot of ways. Let's get back to this video. Appreciate you guys checking in.
They get control of fiscal policy, it's going to be much harder to reverse it.
Can you, I'm going to ask a series of really dumb questions.
Okay.
I hope you'll indulge me. What's the difference?
Taxation without representation.
But between fiscal and monetary policies?
Okay, monetary policy is I control the process by which currency is issued, including through credit. So I generally govern and control credit issuance.
Yes.
And from that, the currency, the creation and management of the currency. Fiscal policy is when I control the taxes and the borrowing of the U.S. government. Now, because the central bank basically operates the borrowing, it's the borrowing share. But this comes down as this is the Boston Tea Party moment. Can they tax without representation? So I'll give you a little story. During the Biden administration, Biden nominated somebody for control of currency who was ultimately not approved. The Republicans in the Senate killed the nomination. Before she was nominated, 3 weeks before, she wrote an article in the Vanderbilt Law Review that said the great thing about central bank digital currency, in other words, an all digital currency system, is you have the perfect tool to deal with inflation. If inflation gets out of hand, you just freeze everybody's bank accounts.
Now, I believe that was the gold lady, right? What's her name, fam? What was the gold lady? Um, I remember the Republicans was like, heck to the no. What was her name? What was the gold lady's name? The real big will, who they just trying to get to the OCC. Can't remember. King Christopher Hutchins. Can you turn it up some? Oh wow, it's all the way up, bro. It's all the way up. What's that lady's name? The gold. She's the gold bug. Wants to go back to the gold standard. What is the name of that lady? We all remember when Biden tried to get her to be the head of the OCC. What's her name? The lady who wants us to go back to the gold standard, the black hair. Can't remember her name. Judy Sheldon. There it is. Pookie Pookie. Thank you, my friend. Judy Sheldon. That's who they were talking about. Aaron Medina checked in. What's going on, bro? Hey, Rachel. How are you? Appreciate you checking in. Judy Sheldon. That's it. All right. We're listening to Tucker Carlson interview Catherine Austin. Was it Fitz? Talking about the BIS. Judy Shelton. Yeah, Judy Shelton. All right. So she was the gold person that the Republicans were not having anything with her being in at the OCC. All right, let's continue.
Right. So it's so
Inflation is a creation of monetary. It's the effect of monetary policy. It's like something that somebody did to you.
well, there are two things that cause inflation. So one is monetary policy, managing monetary policy in a way that creates monetary inflation. But you also have, and we're going through it now, what I call deglobalization, where you have real increases in the cost of goods. So my cost of goods are going up, and it's not because they're issuing, too much currency relative to growth. It's because we are reversing globalization. Globalization created a whole lot of lower costs for a variety of reasons.
So if you had severing of supply chains, for example, that would cause inflation because it just costs more to get the materials and the goods.
Right. And it's not just higher prices. It's, some products, a lot of products stop being economic and just go away. So, when you hiccup supply chains, especially if you do it by shock doctrine or shock and awe, which is what we're watching now, it wrecks. So think of it like a flotilla of ships that need to turn. If the aircraft carrier doesn't let everybody know they're turning, then the boats aren't ready to turn, and you have boats smashing into each other.
You sink a lot of ships doing it.
You sink a lot of ships.
So leaving aside whether that was wise or not, that's what we're doing.
Right.
So you get inflation out of that. Of course, you're absolutely right. If oil prices go up, you get inflation.
Right. And that deglobalization started in the financial crisis. So, so it's accelerating now, but it's not that we just started it.
How did it start in 2008?
Yes.
Because why?
Because for several reasons, but one is we were trying to exercise more and more control through the dollar system. And we've always exercised a lot of power and control and extracted a subsidy from the dollar system. But you have more and more people trying to get out of the system. And the financial crisis, the Asian crisis in 97 was a real wake up to Asia. You need to create more resiliency. But more and more things happened. And then in 2008, it started to accelerate with the creation of as the BRICS started to organize and work to sort of pull out of the
dollar. So the idea was you've got a world economy based on the dollar. The people who issue and administer the dollar are not running things. Responsibly, therefore we need a separate safe haven.
The people running the dollar system want a unipolar model.
Yeah.
The U.S. wants a unipolar model, and we don't want to be part of a unipolar model because we don't want, if you look at the level of subsidy they're extracting, we don't want that level of subsidy extraction. And if you look at some of the rules and regulations, we don't want to be a part of it. So we in India, the I don't know if you ever saw it, one of the greatest explanations of globalization ever given. Sir James Goldsmith came to the United States in 1994 and he did an interview with Charlie Rose and he described why we should never approve the Uruguay round of GATT and institute the WTO. And he, to this day, he nailed it perfectly.
If you could summarize his argument, what would it be?
He said, we are going to hollow out the middle class in the West, and we are going to devastate our culture.
Our culture?
Yes, our culture. We're going to devastate our culture, and we're going to devastate the quality of the food supply.
He said that?
Yes. So now,
Think about that. We're going to hollow out the middle class in the West, and we're going to devastate the quality of the food. Alarming.
those are my words of way of saying it. You should watch it. And I think to this day, I think it's the best description. And if you read my online book and you listen to Sir James Goldsmith, what they both describe is the fact we knew what we were. In other words, the leadership knew that this would destroy or devastate the West.
So why'd they do it?
That's the $64,000 question.
Well, they hate the West. Defenders of the West. I
think one of the reasons they did it is I think they wanted to create the capacity and centralize the capital they needed to go into space. And I think they knew that they would need every 100 or so years, the central bankers do a reset. And I think they knew they were coming into a reset. And they felt with this technology that they, if they didn't globalize, someone else would, and they wanted to control the process.
So they needed the money to go into space?
Mm-hmm. The capital.
Well, I don't even know what that means.
So I think they wanted to build the capacity to become a multiplanetary civilization. Really? Yeah.
Spring and summer are here. It's good news. It means you get to go outside and frolic in the sunshine. Unfortunately, there's a downside. It's before they happen. It does it with AI-powered cameras.
Let me skip through the.
So the Treasury and the Fed.
Plans for SimpliSafe start around $1 per day, so it's not crazy expensive at all. Visit SimpliSafe, that's SIMPLI safe.com/Tucker, and get 50% off a new system with professional monitoring. You get your first month for free. That's SimpliSafe.com/Tucker. There is no safe like SimpliSafe. Man, I was caught up in such minutia in 1994. I never heard anybody say that. I had no idea that was happening.
So I didn't become convinced of that in 1994. I became convinced.
Were you still working for the federal government in 94?
My company was the lead financial advisor for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And I was trying to clean up the mortgage corruption. And what I ran smack into
Listen to this.
that they were clearly and intentionally setting up the infrastructure to dramatically increase mortgage fraud. Intentionally. Mortgage fraud is a public-private partnership between the New York Fed member banks and the federal government.
Intentionally. She's saying this publicly. Between the central bank and the federal government. Intentional mortgage corruption. Intentional. Let me say hey to some more people in the stream. Keyless is like, OMG. Yeah. Yeah, Rupert. Our development is, they say it's in like this deep hole. And this is a new development, barely 4 years old. Maybe barely 5 years old. But yeah. Think about that for a second. Think about that, what she's saying there. Legendary, what is this you're saying? You talking about this lady here? Legendary says she also said, welcome to the stream, bro. It's a very quiet audio. Oh my God. Really? I don't understand what's going on. I mean, it's all the way up. Um, I don't know if my thing, yeah, my volume's all the way up. This YouTube thing, like it's all the way up, guys. It's all the way up. Hmm. She also said a few years ago that one of the Scandinavian, maybe Sweden countries was developing an implant for the military that uses XRP. Wow, I don't know why would that be? You guys are saying you can't hear that audio. Hmm. Okay, thank you, Keyless. That is so odd. All right, let's get back to it. Let me get back to this video. I mean, think about that intentional corruption in the mortgage industry. Intentionally, intentionally done. When you hear about what happened in the 1990s, you haven't heard that part yet. Uh, it's alarming. And it makes perfectly good sense when you think about it. Like, there's a reason why 95% of the people are not doing okay. It's not because a lack of ambition, lack of a dream, lack of opportunity. When you think about this, intentional to destroy the middle class. That just to even idea, a concept that someone would mention that this dude stating that they were going to do that is crazy. But the part about giving up, you guys going to hear that and be like, they gave up on the country. When you hear that part, it's another part, not the one she's mentioned earlier. It's alarming.
So the Treasury and the Fed were clearly engineering a massive new mortgage bubble. And essentially, I was doing a series of things. And that mortgage bubble was going to centralize capital. And I was working on a whole plan coming out of the Bush administration. We were taking all our profits and investing in building a software infrastructure that would help communities
Let's
decentralize political and economic power, but in a way that would create new great wealth. And one of the projects we had was we were working with I had a subsidiary that had a project working with the top pension fund leaders in the country. And essentially our job was to figure out how the pension funds could invest so that they could handle this baby boomer demographic going through the pension and retirement system. And and how we could do it, how they could invest their money because they're operating at such a size that it would be good for America. You know, how do you build a stronger America in a way that helps the baby boomers, live in retirement? And I made a presentation in the spring of 1997
listen to this.
we were at a big money management firm outside of Pennsylvania, and one of the board members was a money manager who worked with a lot of the pension funds. And so we had all these top corporate and state pension fund leaders. And I made a presentation. We had done a simulation of re-engineering the Philadelphia economy to achieve this. And the top pension fund leader looked at me and he said, "Oh my God, this is very similar to what we tried long ago and it didn't work." And I said, "You didn't have the internet, you didn't have the tools to get the average person's learning metabolism high enough, on an economic basis to do that. We had built a data servicing company in low income communities, and we were able to show how easily we could get labor for welfare and making lots of money, being very productive at high speed. And he looked at me and he said, "You don't understand. It's too late." I said, "What do you mean it's too late?"
Think about that. They had built something for the inner cities to get dope, right? And she said lots off of welfare and make lots of money. They put a system together. They figured out the software. This company did it all. And the dude said, it's too late. And it's not too late because you can't save it. You can't save the middle, the lower to middle class. That wasn't the reason why it was too late. Listen to the reason why it was too late.
He said they've given up on the country. They're moving all the money out starting in the fall.
They've given up on the country and they're starting to move the money out in the fall. Now, we've been in the crypto space. How many of you have heard about the trillions of dollars, trillions and trillions of dollars that has gone missing and is unaccountable? They can't find it. Wait until you hear about the BIS. It'll probably answer the question as to why they can't find this money. They had given up on the country and they started moving the money out. This country.
He said, "You've got to get to Nick Brady." Nick had been I had been a partner at Dillon Reed, and Nick had been the chairman of Dillon Reed before he became Secretary of Treasury. And at that point, Nick is out, but sort of involved. Anyway, he said, "You've got to get to Nick and let him know it's not hopeless. This can all be turned around." And I thought he meant we, the pension funds, have been instructed to reinvest equity and reallocate our equity into the emerging markets, which made sense because they had a much higher growth rate. What I didn't realize then was, and I realized shortly thereafter, in October of 1997, that's the beginning of the 1998 fiscal year, huge, enormous amounts of money started disappearing from the U.S. government. And literally, by the time of 9/11, there was 4.1 trillion missing from DOD and HUD. And if you remember, the day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld stood up and basically said, he did a press conference and he said, there's 2.3 trillion in undocumentable adjustments last year at DOD, and we're missing money, and it's worse than terrorism. And then, of course, I was working with a reporter on a huge story that would have published that Friday after 9/11 about the missing money. We've been working on it for over a year, and she'd done 9 stories. I'd helped her do 9 stories because we were trying to get the General Accounting Office, now they call it the General Accountability Office, but we were trying to get both Congress and the GAO to do something about it and to try and stop it. And anyway, as you know,
Yeah, priorities changed.
right.
And for reasons that we still don't understand. And
I understand.
Well,
Well,
I don't think the average person, I think, sort of thinks, well, maybe there were 19 guys from
but here's
Saudi or something.
I call the Patriot Act the Control and Concentration of Cash Flow Act, because one of the things that happened after 9/11, if you look at the history of the black budget, the sort of secret financing that the government uses for secret and classified projects, that pot of money had grown and grown and grown, and it had become very dysfunctional to try and get that money. Mortgage fraud, I believe, was one of the biggest sources, and that's why what I was doing sort of went into the heart of the problem. But the Patriot Act and that whole process was very successful at moving a lot more money onto the budget. In other words, it made it much easier to get enormous amounts of money for the national security state as a result of what happened. Now, whenever you do an operation like this, you stack functions. So it's only one of many goals, but it was very successful.
Well, it all went right over my head. I thought it was all about Muhammad Atta. I had no idea. I know you're laughing.
I want to tell you my church story.
Wait, hold on. There's so many threads here.
Yeah, there's a lot of threads.
Yeah, there's a lot of threads. I don't want to let it continue to hang in the air, this question of space. You sort of threw that out parenthetically, but like, well, I've never heard that before. So you believe, going back 30 years, that people in the U.S. government and in the finance world wanted money for.
Yeah, it wasn't U.S. government. It was the central banking. If you look at the group of people who meet through the BIS.
What's that?
The BIS is the Bank of International Settlements, and it's the central bank of central banks.
Where is that located?
It's in Basel, Switzerland, and it has 63 of the most powerful central banks as its members, and the New York Fed and the Fed are both shareholders. They became shareholders in 1994.
In what sentence? What's the?
So it's important to note that the Fed, the New York Fed, are shareholders in the BIS. Shareholders in the BIS. So this is, again, the central bankers, right? They talk about the banking cartel. You understand what's going on and what has been going on since 1913. And it's one of those subtle things I talk about a lot of times about influence. You just, like Tucker was saying, if you come and you stand in front of me, you got a gun or a knife or a bat, I know who the enemy is. But when it's a subtle, slow, calculated, subtle attack that's planned and executed over decades, you don't notice it. You don't know who the real enemy is. And to think that, I mean, the whole BIS thing and the thing that they do, and the thing that Ripple and the people go to, and a lot of the crypto whatever go to this thing in Davos, right? Alarming. He's learning about the BIS. He didn't know. He didn't know where they were, where they located.
What's the purpose of the Bank of International Settlements?
Okay, so there are two things you need to know about the Bank of International Settlements.
I'm not sure my brain's big enough for this, but keep going.
It is.
Okay.
It has sovereign immunity.
What does that mean?
It's above the law.
It's its own country.
Right. It's its own country. It has its own police force. And essentially,
Okay, so I just want you to think about that for a second. Let me go to the stream. The BIS, which is the central bank of central banks, it's located in a nation. It's located in a nation, Switzerland. But yet it has its own police force. What's going on, Alex G? It has its own police force. And it has the sovereign thing that she just mentioned. It is above the law. It's above the law. Did you guys know that? I had no clue. I had no clue. And people just going around living. There are people and the citizens of Switzerland. You ever notice how these really, really important things are in Switzerland? There's citizens of that country. I bet you they don't know about this. Well, they probably, maybe they do know. Think about that. And we're just going around, we're just kind of living our lives with an entity that is largely responsible for our financial well-being, the central bank of central banks, and they are beyond reproach. They are above the law. And guess who gave them that? Wait till you hear who gave them this sovereignty.
And one of its staff being in a car accident, or minor things. no one has the legal authority to move against it.
No one has the legal authority to move against it.
Number two, it can move money and hold it on its on its balance sheet and manage money secretly. So if I want to, I'm grossly oversimplifying. If I want to steal 21 trillion from the U.S. government and park it on the balance sheet of the BIS, it can move it anywhere in the world and it can keep it on its balance sheet secretly.
I just think about that for a second. And where do you think this missing money that Rumsfeld talked about, that she's talked about, this $4.1 trillion that from the DOD and the HUD just went missing, is unaccountable, unaccounted for? There is an intentional plan to destroy the middle class in this country. Remember, we're the wealthiest nation, so they ain't going somewhere else like Bangladesh to try to take wealth and extract wealth. There ain't a lot going on there, or Nigeria or whatever. There's not a lot going on there. They're doing it here from the people here. They did it to your parents and their parents. Remember 1913. Since 1913, this is what's been going on. They made it, obviously, they made it abundantly clear in 97, this is what we're doing. And they started extracting trillions of dollars. Crazy. What's that? What's that from Legendary? Oh, here's an article mentioning where Catherine Finch mentions Ripple Ripple using XRP for implant. Oh, I remember that. I remember hearing about that. Using XRP for implants. I believe the United States Navy was paying a Swedish company to develop it. I remember the implants thing. I don't know how XRP fit into that, but I do remember that implants thing. I do very much remember that with the Navy. I do remember that. Oh, okay, so someone's saying not that loud. Someone else is saying it's too low. I guess maybe I'm too loud and the video's too low. What's going on, Joe? How are you? Appreciate you checking in. So, yeah, that's crazy. Or are you saying the video is not that loud? I'm not sure which one you're saying, buddy. Think about that. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you, she's going to go on to say the reason for me, the reason why I'm sharing this with you guys, because it's just important to know.
Why would there be an organization? But first of all, where does its power? Like, who empowered it to have sovereign immunity in the right?
It was created after World War I, and sort of collected its powers and got going in the 30s. And it was created in theory to manage the reparations as the German government. But if you read the real history, it was because the Bank of England and the central bankers wanted an entity that had sovereign immunity. They wanted to be able to move money secretly. So, for example, if you look at what happened during World War II and all the money that was moving back and forth between the Germans and Americans, Dulles was over in Switzerland helping to manage all these transfers back and forth. So there's a wonderful book called The Tower of Basel by a wonderful Hungarian journalist where he documents and describes the whole history of the Bank of International Settlements. And if you want to understand power in this world, understanding how the Bank of International Settlements and the plumbing of the central banking system works is very, very important.
I've always been worried that if I knew more that I would become mentally ill.
No. So I just have to say that reality is sort of the door that you open to find real solutions.
There it is, right there. Reality is the door that you open to find solutions. And I know some XRP entertaining content creators, when you say something about Ripple and or CBDCs or blah 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 blah, you're being negative. Oh, you're being negative, right? Right? You're just being negative, da, 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 just being negative. But the reality, right? The reality and the truth is the door that opens up to finding the solutions. You got to know the truth. And that's why I put it in the thumbnail of this video is assets, is the digital assets system. Are assets like XRP, Bitcoin, and FLR the answer? Because they got a plan and they're moving to a new system. The central bankers want to move to a new system. And so maybe when we hear Congress people talking about ending the Fed, I don't know. For me, I want to pay more attention to that. I want to pay more attention to that and speak to that and maybe stand up a little bit more about that. Because this is a central banker thing. And it's not that the government is not complicit as well, but it's a central banker thing. Remember, the Congress relinquished the control in 1913. They got hoodwinked. I mean, how else, Joe, can you explain? How else can you explain trillions of dollars going missing and no one knows? How else do you explain that? I'm going to get the link to this video here for you guys to continue to watch the rest of this. I'm going to hop off here. How else can you explain that? Stable coins are just as trackable, traceable, and controllable as a CBDC? Probably. Probably. Digital is digital. Once you're in the system, it is what it is. Probably. But if you have another form of an asset and you're not relying upon the stable coin, right? That's or a CBDC, you have another asset like Bitcoin, like XRP, like FLR, right? This is why the digital asset space is important. It's not about just traceable; it's controlling, right? Just and that's why you remember all those rumors about what happened in 2020 being a test to see how many people were actually not going to go out after certain hours, how many people were going to actually wear those masks, how many people were actually going to take vaccines. It was remember all I talk about how it was a test to see how compliant people were or if people were going to just fall in line. Remember that? And it's interesting that she said the people that gave the BIS this sovereignty was the Bank of England and the Fed here. And that's the same thing that um, our guy, um, the Great Taking, the same guy from the Great Taking, he said the same thing. When someone asked him, where did this whole thing where they're trying to take your assets, if you don't hold it, you don't own it, and they're trying to take it and confiscate, where did that all start? How did that? He said he believed it was the Bank of England and the New York Fed. Two separate things in terms of trying to take control over here and take control over here, but the same person, the same entity, the Bank of England and the Fed. So again, I love what she says there. The truth because he was like, I don't know if I can take this. And that's what they want. They want people to feel like it's nothing they can do. Helpless. That's what they want. And she's out there, she says she's tackling, I don't know if you caught it, but she's tackling things at the state level, the same way the guy at the Great Taking who wrote the Great Taking is doing as well, doing things at the state level because there are things that the state can do to override the federal laws and federal government to protect the citizens. But not without awareness. If they don't know, they can't. If we don't know, they can't. So I just wanted to share it with you guys. I appreciate you guys checking in. It's some food for thought for sure, because it's not about being hopeless. It's about becoming aware of the reality of the truth so that we can then seek solutions for our kids and our kids' kids. For me, that's what I think it's about. So I wanted to share that video with you guys. I know it's been a while since I've done a live stream or a video, but I want to share that because it's just really important out there. Got to be, I think it's really, really important. And I do think that the fact that she was in the Bush administration, I think, that context is important because she was on the inside. And of course, she was leading that company that was working with the HUD. And I just think, for me, having my, the military background and the clearances that I had, and then, kind of another level when I was worked the FAA, you just learn so many things about what we can do that. What they can do that. It's like alarming because you're just like you think you're just talking to airplane, but when you're in control of the security of the world's most powerful thing there, right? In DC, and you're in control of that. Yeah, you get some stuff, and it is cray cray. It's like literally cray cray when you hear it, and yeah. I first got exposed to that in the military. Those little officers clubs. So yeah, it's interesting. So I think the truth is important. The reality of the truth is important. Like some people don't want to believe that it's possible, but just think about it. Why are the masses not doing well? In the greatest country in the world, why is 90 something percent of them not doing well? You ever think about that? You ever think about that? Why is the monetary policy and that system, why is it so difficult to understand? Monetary and fiscal. Why is it so complicated? Then if you read the Great Taking, and when you can fact check the Great Taking, say, oh, yep, this is a law. This is in the UCC. Yep, this is a thing. And then if you talk to the right securities attorneys, and you can read them and quote them and share that and have them look it up, and they can tell you, oh, yeah, that is a thing. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. It's an eye opener, but it's the truth. But at least you know the truth. All right, he who controls the money controls the world. Yep, that's exactly right. That's right. Legendary is not taught to the people. You have to educate yourself. That's exactly right. And by the way, that was also intentional by Rockefeller and I forget the other dude. No, this is the kind of education we want going on in the system. And Rockefeller ended up owning different entities that fed the educational system. That's why those few people met and thought to themselves, "Yeah, we're going to just meet in Jekyll Island and do our thing." These 5, 6 dudes. Yeah, we're just going to meet. We're going to put this thing together, and we're going to put it out there, and we're going to control the Congress, and we're gonna get them in our pockets. Yeah. Anyway, all right, fam. Cray cray. But look, I think the important is the truth because we can handle it. And again, the truth is the reality opens the door to finding the solutions to the problem. If we just want to run around with a head in the sand and saying we're useless, helpless, that's what they want. That they want the feeling of helpless. Let's distract them with entertainment. Again, I just say to you, you don't find it oddly suspicious that the entertainment business is so sports entertainment is that they're just good, literally good with letting athletes become billionaires. You know why they're good with that? Because it's just a small percentage and they can keep you entertained and distracted. You ever think about 600-700 million dollar contracts to do something part time? You ever think about that? Any case. All right, fam. Thank you so much for checking in. I appreciate you guys. For sure, I got to run out and get some dinner or something for the family. It's always great to see you guys. Appreciate you checking in. Do me a favor, hit that like button on the way out. That'd be really, really cool if you could do that. Please check out that video. They'll put the link in the chat for you. Get, level up. I don't know. Maybe you'll pay a little bit more attention when a few members of Congress look to put stuff in writing to end the Federal Reserve. Maybe you'll think about doing it and talking to your local representative, sending them a note that you're in favor of such a thing. Remember, they're trying to keep their jobs. So, all right, fam. I appreciate you guys. I'm going to end this video like I do all my videos and remind you guys of this. Old money doesn't want you to win. But that's okay, though, because you and I, we're already winning. And I would ask you to consider this or perhaps ponder the idea or notion of living your life permissionless. I'll talk to you guys soon. See ya.